Hey everybody, Tim Bergholz here. Welcome to our 3ds Max introduction. I'm a senior 3D artist who works in the game industry since 2008, and in this introduction tutorial I will show you all my essential tips, tricks and tools which I gathered over this time. 3ds Max is an extremely configurable program, and because of that it's also often a matter of personal preferences. Everything I show you here is based on my personal experience and what I think works best. Alright, let's get started. By default, when you start 3D Max, there's a good chance it will look something like that here. We have 4 different windows that we can use, and that enables us to, for example, create some fresh geometry here in that window and look at it here from different perspectives in the other windows. We can always toggle through these windows by pressing down the middle mouse wheel button, and then with Alt and W we can maximize that particular viewport. And Alt and W again will also get us out of there again. So let me open up the one here with a perspective on it. As you can see here, that's where we can quickly also change our views around. So I'm gonna leave it here with a perspective and talk about the movement, which, if you press down Alt and hold the middle mouse wheel button, enables us to circle around our object like that here. If you just press down the middle mouse wheel button, it will then enable us to do that here, pan around our object. And pressing Ctrl plus Alt and using the middle mouse wheel button will allow us to zoom in on one axis. So that way we can be very precise here and zoom straight into some area that we want to be doing some work on. And the other one worth mentioning is the Zoom Extends shortcut. Even though we're going to cover the shortcuts later on, I just want to combine that here with our controls in 3D Max. Let's say we zoomed out like that. If we just make a selection here for that object and press Y, it will zoom perfectly into that object here. So that is a quick way of getting back to our geometry and a shortcut that becomes very useful quite often. And let's have a look at our modifier sets. If they don't show by default, you want to click on that button and make sure it says Show Buttons there. I would recommend to put these modifiers in our modifier sets just so that you can follow better later through the tutorial. Configure modifier sets will open up the configuration mode for it, and we can just drag and drop any modifiers here onto our right side, which will then make them appear there in the modifier sets. Pressing M will bring up our material editor. You can change between the Slate material editor and the old school compact material editor. I prefer the old one, and that allows us to just bring up the material editor at any time and apply materials to our objects. As the next thing, under Customize, I'll bring up our preference settings here. And the first thing that I want to do is change our scene undo levels to somewhere around 100. That allows us to just undo 100 steps, which sometimes might be better than just 20, which is there in the default settings. So I would definitely crank that up. And as the next thing, I will go over here to our Files tab. And under the Auto Backup section here, we can then crank up our auto back files. And what exactly that is that 3D Max will automatically have a folder called AutoBack, and in that folder 3D Max saves these files all 5 minutes defined on the backup interval time below. So I'm gonna crank that up all the way to 50 so that we have 50 auto backup files, and I'm gonna leave it at 5 minutes here for the backup interval. So next I'm going to go over here to the Gamma tab, and by default it's enabled. We actually want to have it disabled, but let me show you what it does when it's enabled. it brightens up our whole viewport in ways that we actually don't want it to be. So I'm going to disable it, which will result in a more realistic way than having this overexposure and brightness. Next, I'm going to go over here to the viewport configuration under Views and Viewport Configuration. And under the Display Performance, first of all, I want to add some anti-aliasing here to our scene. Let's have it at least at 2. And I also want to crank up these viewport images here to 4K. And that will just result in 3D Max then to give us the maximum available resolution for, let's say we want to load in some reference